So, welcome. We are here for how to present your research at the Summer Research Conference. My name is Sophia Tin Neri. I am with the Undergraduate Research Hub as the Assistant Director, and my colleague Kirsten is here as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Kirsten Kung. I'm also with the Undergraduate Research Hub, and we are very happy to have you here. We're excited about the Summer Research Conference, and we are sure that you are as well. So we can go ahead and get started. To give you an idea of what we'll be talking about today, the first part, we're going to be talking about how to design your presentation itself. So how to go about putting together a presentation, and specifically a presentation for the Summer Research Conference. And then the second part of the presentation will focus on the Summer Research Conference itself. So a lot of the nitty-gritty details about what to expect for that specific conference. And then we'll have question and answer time after each of those sections so that you'll have plenty of time to get any questions that you might have answered. All right, next slide, formatting and design tips. So again, we're going to start by talking about how you go about designing a presentation for a conference like the Summer Research Conference. The presentation that you're going to be giving is an oral presentation. I know some of you may have given poster presentations before. An oral presentation is somewhat different. It's similar to what I'm doing now in that you'll be using slides and talking to the audience, but it will be in person. And so we're going to talk about the types of things that you should include and some formatting tips. Okay, so formatting and design tips. If you look at this slide, it says, when presenting, remember that slides are not the presentation. Slides guide the presentation. You're giving the presentation, not reading it. Keep this presentation simple. One way to do this is to use bullet points to highlight key information that you will talk about. I also recommend using animations to display information. All right, so that was probably a little bit difficult to follow. There's a lot of information on this slide, and I was speaking very quickly and at times a little quietly. Let's go ahead to the next slide so that you can see something in contrast to that. Formatting and design tips. So here's a slide that has a nice, clear title, and the cartoon kind of illustrates what I was doing wrong previously. I was reading every word out loud, just kind of going through exactly what was on the slide. It was not very engaging. It was not very interesting. It was just reading what was up there, and what was up there was way too dense. There's much too much information. Next point. Okay, so the slides should not be the same as your presentation. In other words, you shouldn't have slides where everything that is on the slide is exactly the same thing that you say. You want to have the slides kind of guide your presentation and highlight some key parts and some key elements, but it shouldn't be word for word what you're saying. You want to keep it simple. For presentations of this sort, there's a danger in sharing too much information. You've all been doing research for a while now. You've all spent a lot of time doing a lot of research, and the amount of information that you have about your project is far too much to fit into a brief presentation. So you're going to really have to pick and choose, and you're going to have to simplify things so that the audience is able to take away a message that really kind of has the crux of the matter rather than every single detail of things that you've done. Next point. So often using bullet points is a good way to do this. It kind of helps organize things. It helps give the audience a sense of the general outline of what you're going to be talking about, but then you can expand upon it. So you'll see that what I've been doing is there have been these bullet points that have come up, and then in each case, I'm expanding upon that. I'm saying a little bit more about that. That's what you want to do with your presentation. Similarly, you'll see that in each case, there's big dark bullet points like slides equals not presentation and keep it simple. And then those are followed by more detailed bullet points. And the thing that you want to strive for here is to try to keep everything consistent and parallel. So in this case, the biggest points, the slides equal not presentation and the keep it simple, are kind of at the same level in terms of organization. And so they are at the same level in terms of font size, and they're both bolded and that type of thing. And then the bullet points underneath that are details explaining more about the big bullet points. And so those detail bullet points are at the same level as each other in terms of font size and that sort of thing. Next bullet point. So minimal text. If you have a lot of text, like what we saw in that very first slide, it's too distracting. The audience is trying to read it. They're trying to listen to you. It's not possible to do both. So if you have just minimal text to help convey the main ideas, that's what will be most effective in helping your audience follow what you're going to say. Next one. Uh, Generally, it can be helpful to have some images. It keeps things from being a little too boring, quite frankly. It just kind of livens things up. It can also provide really important information, but you don't want to have any slide overwhelmed with information. So one or two graphics per slide, so if you have a cartoon like I do here, having one or two of those, or if you have a graph or something along those lines, you don't want to have so many that, again, there's too much information on the slide for the audience to work through. Next. And you want simple backgrounds. These days, there's so many opportunities to do really fun, exciting backgrounds and to make it fancy. That's nice to do, but it often detracts from the actual message and the presentation itself. So it's fine to do something to make your presentation look polished and sharp, but don't do anything that's going to be distracting or will really kind of take away from the presentation itself. So something simple is always going to be best. Okay, next. A lot of times you can control visibility with simple animations. What that is what you're seeing here. So here's the slide that says formatting and design tips. There's multiple bullet points on this slide, but you're only seeing the bullet point that I'm talking about now. And then when the next bullet point, when I'm ready to talk about the next bullet point, I can then advance it and it'll show you what the next point is. That can be useful in that it helps keep the audience focused just on what you're talking about rather than having them read ahead and then kind of miss some of what you're talking about. Next slide and next point. You also want to be consistent. I already talked about this a little bit. Again, this just refers to having things laid out in a manner where the structure is consistent, something that's at a certain level of an outline, so to speak, should be formatted in the same way as other things at that level of the organization or outline. Next, font. It's important to use a font that people will be able to read. Again, there's so many fonts available, and it's tempting to use something that will kind of stand out and be a little bit different. Unfortunately, that often results in people being distracted or depending on the font, sometimes it's difficult to even read the font. So you don't want that. You just want something that is not taking away from the presentation. It's easy to read, it's clear. So stick with one of kind of the quote standard fonts. Easy to read, as I just said. Next one. Usually size 18 plus point is what you'll want to go for. The rooms are kind of moderately sized, so it's not like you'll be in a gigantic lecture hall designed for 300 people, but it's also not like you're just going to be right next to the audience members. So you want it to be big enough that it's easy for people to read regardless of where they're sitting in the room. And contrasting colors. I don't know if you remember from the first slide that we showed, but there was some of the text that was in this kind of blue turquoise font color, and it was very difficult to read against the white background. You don't want to do anything that's going to make it difficult for the audience to read. The point is not for them to have to struggle or focus to figure out what the slide is saying. The point is for the slide to just enhance what you're saying. And so having contrasting colors like black on white or something that's very easy to read is what you should go for. Okay, don't be afraid to go big. I mentioned the 18 plus size font, particularly for important elements of this. You really want to have the font big enough that it's very easy for people to see. One place where people often have struggle with this a little bit is that if you have charts or graphs or things like that, you really want them to be quite large, including the legends. So any chart or graph that you have, you will walk people through and describe it to them, but you also want it to be something where they could, in looking at what you have on your slide, figure out the main points of it. So think about that. Make sure that what you're putting up makes sense and is easy to read. You may even want to break it into multiple different slides depending on what it is that you're showing. So again, a bigger font size really can make a difference with charts. Charts and graphs are often inherently smaller and a little more dense to read, so you want to do what you can to make it easy. As I mentioned, you can sometimes split the information across slides. Even if there's two different graphs and they're showing very similar things, they don't necessarily need to be on the same slide. If you're trying to contrast what's on slide one with what's on slide two and say, oh, this is, this is in this condition and this is in the other condition, maybe having them on the same slide would help. But a lot of times it's just too much information, and having the information across multiple slides can make a big difference. So here's some examples of some graphs and tables and slides or slides, graphs and tables. You can see that looking at this, it's really hard to know what it is you're looking at or what the point of it is. And research is complex. It has a lot of different elements to it. So it's not surprising that you would have a table like this or a graph like this that shows a lot of information. But for a brief talk, these talks are essentially 12 minutes, you're not going to be able to cover everything that's on here. So when you look at, say, the table, you're really only going to cover one or maybe two things. But if you show the whole table as it is here, it's going to be very difficult for the audience to know what to focus on, even if you help walk them through it. So if we look at the next one, you'll see that this is the same table, but it's much larger, so it's easier to see. And then there's a red box around the part of interest. So the table has a title. It tells you what it is that you're looking at. And then I, as the presenter, would be able to say, here's a table of the demographic characteristics of the participants in the study. I want you to pay particular attention to the percentage of people who had a 4-year degree and the percentage of people who had a master's degree. So you're showing what you want them to focus on, and then you, as the presenter, are kind of highlighting what it is. Or you can say something like, you'll notice that there were 33% of the people had a 4-year degree and 25% of the people had a master's degree. Next one. Okay, so organizing your presentation. You'll start with an introduction, and typically you'll want to have a slide that has your name, has the title of the project that you're on, likely has your mentor or the research team that you're a part of. Next bullet point. So name, mentor, summer research program, which is very important, title of the project. You can include sponsoring or applicable departments. If you've received a grant or if your mentor has received a grant that's supporting this research, you'll want to put that in as well. And you'll want to have an introduction and background of research. Typically, people have one slide for the introduce yourself part that's on the left-hand side of this slide. And that's something that you just go over very quickly. It's your name, welcome, thank you for coming to my talk. Here's my name, here's my title, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll move into the introduction and background of your research. Next bullet. So you want to establish the academic context. Basically, you want the audience to know the significance of your research to your field and or the larger world. So your research, even if it's a completely novel idea, is based on research that has already been done. So you might be investigating a novel idea, but you need to kind of establish that this is a novel idea. So research on this broad topic in the past has focused on X, but nobody has ever investigated Y. So you want to set this context. You want to give people a sense of what is already known, because that then helps them understand why what you're doing is important and how what you're doing adds to the knowledge that's already out there. So make sure you're giving some thought to what you want to have as the intro and background. Next bullet, please. So you'll want to introduce the topic, kind of very broadly speaking. You'll want to talk about the previous literature. So what has already been done? And then you want to narrow it down to the research question that you're asking or the goal. So a lot of times people talk about presentations or research papers in an hourglass shape where it starts very broad, it narrows in, and then it goes broad again. So it's starting very broad with the intro. You're talking about, here's the topic, very broadly speaking. And then you narrow it down a little bit and talk about what has already been found in previous literature. Then you narrow it down even more and say, this is the research question. This is the purpose of this particular project. Often that's stated as a hypothesis, but depending on your particular field, it may not really take the form of a hypothesis per se, but it might, but maybe more like just a research question. And then you want to talk about why it's important. And this is where having that context of what's already known makes it easier to explain why what you're doing is important because it adds to this literature. There's a gap in the knowledge that we have. This is a logical next step to kind of figure out what we should know next. Okay, and then you move into the body of your talk. So the key content, one of the things that you really want to spend a lot of time on is kind of these things listed here: theoretical framework, methods, thesis, hypotheses, and results. So you're going to be talking about the theoretical framework that kind of fits with the intro that we talked about. So you talk about what's already known in the literature, you narrow it down. Then you're talking about specifically what sort of theoretical framework you're using for this particular project. Depending on the field, this theoretical framework may or may not play a critical role. There may be some fields where you don't use this theoretical framework idea as much. Often the thesis or hypothesis arrives before the methods because you're essentially talking about this is what we're planning, this is what we want to answer, this is what we anticipate will happen. And then you talk about the methods. In a research paper, the methods section should have enough detail that you would be able, somebody reading that paper who's familiar with the field would be able to replicate it and follow the exact methods that you did. For a presentation like this, it's so brief, you're not going to be able to talk about all of the details. You want to talk about the methods in enough detail that people understand what you did, but you're not necessarily going to be able to talk about lots and lots of specifics. And then you move on into results. And we'll talk in a few moments about the status of results and how many results you may or may not have. Okay, so you want to determine the best way to organize your presentation. What I have here is kind of a general guidelines, but there may be something about your particular project that organizing it, you might want to switch things around a little bit. So the presentation is kind of telling the story of your research. You can do the next bullet points, please. So what are the key concepts that you need to convey? Think about it as you're writing your presentation. Think about it in terms of after your presentation, what do you want the audience to know and remember? So again, there's a lot of the details about the methodology that it's not realistic for them to understand fully or to remember, and it's not that important necessarily. Even the intro and the background, you want to make sure they understand it and they have a context for what you're doing. But really, the focus of this presentation should be the work that you did for your project. And you want to really emphasize as you're putting this together, what's the takeaway? What do you want people to know when they are done listening to your presentation? Most important thing for people to know. Next slide. Oh, transition. Sorry, transition between ideas in a way that shows your logic. This is important. You want to just make sure that you're not jumping all over the place. You are so familiar with this project that it may be obvious to you why B follows from A, but somebody who's not familiar with the project, it might not be as obvious. So you just want to connect the dots a little bit explicitly so that it's easy for people to follow your logic. And then we'll end with a conclusion. Go ahead with some of the bullet points, P, please. So the conclusion will allow you to summarize your thesis and your key points. Um, Again, you want to kind of go back to when you talked about the research question and the hypotheses, and you want to summarize what those were and then talk about whether or not the project ended up lending support to that hypothesis or hypotheses. Sometimes people have a slide that says hypotheses and they list, say, 2 or 3 hypotheses. And then when they're talking about the conclusions, they'll go back to that specifically and list out how the results fit or don't fit with the hypotheses. You want to again reiterate the significance. You want to talk about why this was important, how this added to what's already out there. If there's applications for your research, you can touch on that, kind of say, here's some ways that this research might get used. You can also talk about consequences and future directions. So here's some next steps that we might take. We answered this question, but answering this question just raised 3 other questions. And so here's where we might go next. Often that's the type of question that somebody from the audience might ask. It's like, oh, where might you go next? Next bullet, please. Implications. So again, just kind of think about what your project means, what the results you have mean, what the next steps are, both in terms of research, in terms of what you might be doing, all of those sorts of things. We already mentioned identifying future directions. This can be really nice. It can be a way to show that, okay, we've added to the literature, and now here's where we want to go next with this. Here's a logical next question that we might want to address. Okay. You also want to have time for acknowledgments. Typically, this is a slide at the end that kind of thanks your mentor, thanks people in your research team, again, acknowledges your summer research program, things along those lines. If you do have funding from a grant or something, this is where you would list it. It's very important that when you are listing people who helped you, like research team members, make sure that you're consistent. So refer to them as doctors if they have their PhD or MD or PhD. So if you worked with a postdoc, that person is a doctor, just as a faculty member would be a doctor. And you want to list both of them as Dr. Smith or Dr. Jones. If somebody's a graduate student, they do not yet have a doctorate, so you wouldn't refer to them as doctor. If you're not sure how to refer to somebody, you can ask them. Or you can look it up on web pages or things like that. But you just want to make sure that you're consistent. You don't want to refer to some people who have a doctorate as doctor and other people who have a doctorate not as doctor. So mentors PI, program, funding, etc. All of these things are things that you would have on the acknowledgement slide. You also should have references. Realistically, people in the audience are not going to spend time looking at all of your references and perusing them, but it's important to have that slide so that if somebody asks and says, oh, you said that you followed the methodology of so-and-so, which paper is that? Then you can go back to that references slide and easily point out what you're talking about. And you also want to thank the audience for their attention. They are there to give you encouragement and feedback, and it's great that they're taking time to come and listen to your talk. Okay, so actually presenting. Next slide, please. Again, don't just read the slides. You want to be engaged with the audience. You can go ahead and put up several bullet points at a time, please, Daniel. So explain each slide, especially the tables and graphs and things like that. You want to walk people through it. Even if you have a beautifully laid out slide that's really well labeled and things like that, it can be difficult for somebody to work their way through it. You just want to make sure that they are taking away from that slide what you want them to take away from. We typically say that slides should take about 1 minute per slide. So for people who are presenting on their own, you have a 12-minute time period to present. So that means about 12 slides. Slow down. Um, it's very easy to talk too fast. So just take a deep breath, slow down. We'll talk about this in a moment, but it's going to be really, really important to practice in advance so that you know that you'll be well within your time limit. Be very confident in sharing the work you've done. You've worked really hard. You have devoted hours and hours and hours to this project. You are an expert in what you did. Your mentor may know more about the specific field overall, but you're the one that put in the work. You're the one that knows this project and your contributions to it forward and backward. And that's what the audience wants to hear about. Dress appropriately. By this, it should be business casual. It should not be shorts. It should not be jeans. It should not be a t-shirt. There is a professional closet on the UCSD campus where if you don't have appropriate clothing, you might be able to get some there. Definitely wear shoes that are comfortable because this is 2 long days. Your feet will kill you. So just wear shoes that are comfortable. Also wear clothing that's comfortable. So don't wear something where you're going to constantly need to be adjusting it or pulling it up or anything like that. Uh, Bring a clicker if you want to use one. That can help you go through the slides. The rooms are not huge, so you'll be, presenting close to your computer or to the computer that's there. But sometimes having a clicker can help. And present to the audience. Make sure that you are engaging with the audience, not just reading from a script, not turning and reading the slides like this, because that makes it harder for the audience to feel engaged. You want to be looking at the audience. You can certainly glance at the slides at times, but really you want to be looking at the audience. So a few final tips. What if? What if the project is not finished, the results are incomplete, the experiment failed, etc.? Well, if we knew what it was we were doing, it would not be called research, would it? If we knew for sure what the results would be, there wouldn't be a point to conduct these research projects. Research is at best a bumpy road. So there are definitely times where things do not work the way you intended. Sometimes you need materials to run your study and the materials are delayed and don't get in until a week before the presentation. Sometimes you're waiting for IRB approval. Sometimes you have a colony of mice and something happens to them, and so then you're set back time-wise. There's all sorts of reasons why research can be delayed. There's also all sorts of reasons why an experiment might not, or a project might not lead to the types of results that you're anticipating. And that's okay. That's part of research. Also, I can guarantee you that there are going to be students whose project is not yet done. The summer research program, anyone who's doing research in the summer, it's a short period of time. Even if you're continuing a project that you've been working on, it's a short period of time. So if your project is not finished, if you don't yet have results, I guarantee you will not be alone. You can talk about anticipated results. You can talk about some of the challenges that you had. That's part of research, and you can share that. But it's fine to say, we have some preliminary results. Here's what we found so far, but these are very tentative because you don't have a lot of data yet, so you can't really draw strong conclusions. So it's okay to talk about preliminary results or anticipated results. If you could put up a couple more of the bullet points, please. Yeah, it's again fine to just explain why what you have is not complete, discuss potential avenues, discuss some of the challenges. All of that is fine. And I think the bottom line is just know take a deep breath. Don't worry if you're hearing all this and you're like, oh my gosh, my project isn't anywhere close to what they're describing in terms of being completed. So focus on the content, the purpose, the goals. You can still, all of the things we talked about in terms of the background and the methods and the significance and why you're doing this project, all of that is still there, even if you haven't collected any data yet. All right, next, please. If somebody asks you a question and you don't know how to answer it, that's okay. Take a deep breath. You can say, oh, thank you. I think that's something that we'll have to address in future research, or this project really didn't address that. Sometimes people just want you to kind of think about what you anticipate. So given what you've worked on for this project, what do you think would happen if? And it's okay to kind of think out loud and say, well, given what we know from this project, I would anticipate X. Um, it's just know that it's okay to think on your feet. You can go ahead and put up some more bullet points, please. You can also open the floor to input from colleagues. So if you have your mentor or people from your research team there, like you want to take ownership of the project, but it's also okay to say, oh, my mentor is actually here. I'd love to hear what she thinks about this. It's also okay to go back to the questioner and say, oh, I think that's a really interesting question. I haven't thought about it much. What are your thoughts? Because the person who's asking the question may be asking because they have an idea in mind. Know that anyone who's asking a question is doing it because they're genuinely interested in your research. They're not trying to catch you. They're not trying to have a gotcha moment or anything like that. They're there because they're excited about the research that you're doing, and they may, in their enthusiasm, come across as like, well, what about this? Don't worry if it seems like they are assertive in their questioning. It's probably just excitement about your research. So the audience wants you to succeed. They're excited to see undergraduates who are doing the level of research that you're doing. It's fun to watch that. And so just know that everyone who's there is kind of on your team, excited to hear what you have to say. So a few helpful hints and reminders. Proofread your presentation, practice it out loud in front of mentors and colleagues. I can't emphasize this one enough. Even if you think about it through your mind, until you are actually saying it out loud, you won't know where you have stumbling blocks or things that you think you know how to say out loud, but you might not. Next bullet points, record yourself presenting. That can be really useful as long as it's not something where you're then going to get distracted by, oh, I didn't realize that I said so much, and then you have a hard time with it. Time yourself. There will be moderators in each room, and they will have you adhere to the time limit. We have to keep things on time, and so you don't want to get to a situation where the last 5 minutes of your talk have to be delivered in 45 seconds. The audience is rooting for you, and just have fun with this. You've worked hard. This is going to be a great experience. You will breathe a big sigh of relief when it's over, and know that you're ready for this. You've worked hard, you've done a lot of work, and it's going to go great. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Tin Neri.
Actually, I got a question sent to me privately, but I think this is worth going over out loud. And the question was, what if my data is still confidential? What can I present?
That is an excellent question. And this is definitely something you should be talking with your mentor about. Your mentor should be aware of the fact that you're presenting at this conference. So if they don't even know about this conference, make that a number one priority to talk to them and tell them that you are presenting. And even if they haven't conveyed that something's confidential, have that conversation with them and say, are there things about this project that I shouldn't share in this venue? This is a public conference. Anyone can come to it. And so sometimes research is at a state where it's not ready to be shared for any of a number of reasons. In a case like that, it's best to talk with your mentor about what can and can't be shared, because they'll have the best sense of what needs to be protected still. And they will probably have suggestions about what you can talk about. if nothing else, you certainly should be able to talk about kind of the background and some of the important questions and things along those lines. If you talk to your mentor and you feel like there's literally nothing I can talk about, contact one of us because we can work with you to figure out a way for you to still have a presentation, but also it's very important that you honor what needs to be kept confidential. It's a great question.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's why I wanted to share it with everybody. I will say I have seen a student in the past just not even say like the name of the protein they were working on. They just said protein X, and they just referred to it throughout as protein X so that no one knew exactly which molecule they were working on. And so you can make things more general or more anonymous in a way and still talk about it because maybe the pathway it's in is a general pathway that everyone knows and understands, and that's not confidential. So hopefully there are ways that they can give you advice, but as Dr. Kung said, if you have any questions, you're welcome to come reach out to us and we might be able to give you some more advice. And then there's a question that just came in. They also said thank you. Will the moderator let us know how we are doing with time during our presentation?
Yes, and I will let Dr. Saineri talk a little bit about this more because it is kind of part of the whole SRC thing. So I think you're
Yeah,
going to kind of address that. So
no
good
problem.
question, and that will come up.
Okay, I can answer that real quick while we're here. But yes, the moderator actually will have time cards. They'll show you a time card that says 5 minutes, 1 minute, and then stop. Hopefully you're looking up at your moderator and you can see that these time cards are flashing by, but sometimes people do just kind of look down and forget to look up. So it's a good reminder as you're presenting, keep an eye out on your moderator because they might be able to flash you a quick, hey, you've only got a couple minutes left or you're done. So, all right. And there's another question that asks when will we get our slots? That was actually just sent out by email yesterday. There's a link to that on the SRC website, but we'll go over that in our chat. Oh, there's a question actually related to pointers. Will there be pointers, pointing tools, laser pointers available in each room, or do we need to bring our own?
Do we have enough at
Yes.
URH? Okay,
Yeah.
then we will bring one and have one in each room. If there's anything that you feel like this is the clicker that I know how to use, I'm really comfortable with it. Having a slightly different clicker might just stress me out at the last minute. You're certainly welcome to bring your own, but there should be a clicker. So each room will have a computer, a clicker, a screen where everything gets projected.
Right. And every computer should also have a converter. So I think it can do USB-C. I can't remember what else the converter can do, but at least it can convert from USB-C as a connector for computers to connect to the projector. But let's go ahead and get started. I know there's a couple more questions coming in, but we can get to that in just a minute. Um, let's start with the Summer Research Conference. So it's happening next Wednesday and Thursday, August 12 and 13 at the Price Center. So you will be checking in as student presenters at the West Ballrooms. If you are unclear with where that is, I would recommend you check out where that is on a map so that you can make sure you get there on time. But let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so a lot of information is on our website, src.ucsd.edu, including the presenter list. Next bullet points. It's happening August 12 and 13 in the Price Center. We also have a room in the Student Services Center where some of the talks will happen. So understand that it may be between two different buildings. It should take just a few minutes to walk between them, but just keep that in mind in case you are presenting in a Student Services Center. SSC is a short name for that, and Price Center PC is the name for that. We will have over 320 students presenting, and they come from 47 different colleges and universities, which is super exciting. Just knowing that there's that range of students from all over is neat. I think it's a chance to meet people that are not just here at UC San Diego. They may be regionally, but they may be national and international. I think we have two international universities represented at this. And so you can meet people from Berkeley, you can meet people from BYU, all kinds of universities, and we'll highlight that in our program as well. So keep that in mind because that might help you think about what's next and maybe make new friends. Next bullet points. So there are a total of 7 different sessions. On Wednesday, the 12th, there are 5 different presentation sessions. And on Thursday, there are 2. And so each presenter presents at only one of those sessions. You are not presenting 7 times. You're not presenting to all the presenters at once. You are only presenting to a smaller group of people. Usually it's a range of like 5 people to maybe 30, 40 people. It ranges, sometimes a little more than that if your session happens to be super popular. But when you are not presenting, you're expected to be an attendee going to some of the other talks. So yes, next bullet point, please. So there are 12 concurrent panels during every session, during those 7 different times. At the same time, there are 12 rooms running. So you may be in your room presenting, and there will be 11 other rooms going at the same time. And then once you're done with your hour that you're in your room, you may go to the other rooms and you may go between them. But during your particular session, when you are assigned to that panel, you are staying in that room that whole time during that 1 hour. Outside of that, you can go between talks, but not during someone's talk, preferably. Is there another bullet point? Okay, so this is the actual schedule. You can see how it's laid out across the 7 different sessions. Check-in and breakfast will begin at 8 a.m. each morning and go until 8:30. This is where you can get your name tag, you can grab something to eat. We will have a hot breakfast available for everybody if you're interested. And then welcoming remarks will happen from 8:30 to 9 each morning in the West Ballrooms of Price Center. At 9:15, you'll get a little break. But at 9:15, the first session begins. Morning session number 1, it goes for 1 hour from 9:15 to 10:15. And session number 2 for the morning, 10:30 to 11:30. On Wednesday, there is lunch from 11:30 to 12:30. And then we begin our afternoon sessions, 12:45 to 1:45 is session 1 for the afternoon. 2 to 3 p.m. is session 2. And 3:15 to 4:15 is afternoon session 3. So there is 15 minutes between each of the sessions to walk between in case you want to get from one room to another. It gives you a little bit of time to chat with people, maybe after a session, gives you a chance to go take a break. And so all those things are possible to consider. Also, if you are not presenting during that 1 hour, you can go between the rooms. So just keep that in mind that you're not coming in as someone is presenting, but maybe in between as someone's answering Q&A or you hear the clapping at the end of a session. Thursday is very similar. It begins at 8 to 8:30 for check-in and breakfast. Welcoming remarks 8:30 to 9. Morning session 1 is 9:15 to 10:15, and morning session 2, 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. We will have a closing remarks from 11:45 to noon, and that will be something that's a little bit different from last year, but we will include that. And just keep in mind, Price Center West Ballrooms A and B is the location where check-in and breakfast happens. It is also where the welcoming remarks will be, so same location, you don't need to go anywhere. You can go off to your sessions for morning session 1 and 2, but you come back to Price Room West Ballroom A and B for lunch, go off to afternoon sessions, and then for closing on Thursday, we will also have that from 11:45 to 12 in Price Center West Ballroom A and B. All right, next. So the actual presentations and panels, they are organized around various topics and themes, generally. Within each panel, there are 3 to 4 presentations. So it just depends on how every grouping was put together. And this also counts co-presentations. So co-presentations is 1 presentation. So maximum 4 talks within every hour. Next. For individual presenters, you get 12 minutes for your presentation plus 3 minutes for questions and answers. If you are co-presenting as a pair, you get a total of 16 minutes and 4 minutes for Q&A. We recommend that you split that evenly if you're co-presenting, but it's up to you and your co-presenter to figure out like kind of how that works with your slides and amount of time that you're speaking, but you will have 16 minutes total. Next. We recommend that you arrive 15 minutes early to your session. And so if you are scheduled to present at 12:45, you try to get to your room around 12:30. This gives you a chance to upload your presentation to the computer. We do not have you upload your presentations ahead of time. And so during that passing period in between each of the sessions, we recommend you get there so that you and all the other students can upload your presentation. We do also recommend have at least three different ways to access your presentation. Maybe you have it through email to yourself. You may have it on a flash drive, USB drive. I strongly recommend that as a strong backup. Maybe you have it online through maybe Canva or Google Slides or PowerPoint. Maybe you have it on your computer as well. You may bring your computer as a backup. We do request, if you can, try to use our computers, because the more switching that happens between talks, the more possibilities there are technical issues. But if we can try to use the same machine that's there the whole time, that makes things easier. All right, next bullet point. Yes, and then please keep in mind, as you're going between panels as an attendee, enter and exit as people are finishing their presentation or as they're about to begin the next one. Don't try to go in as they're in the middle of their presentation. It can be very distracting. Next. Oh, and stay in your session for the entirety of your panel. I mentioned this earlier, but just wanted to re-emphasize that. Next slide. So this is what the presenter lineup looks like. This was released by email yesterday, but it's a quick screenshot of what it looks like. These are the first 3 or 4 panels for morning session 1, and there will be similar things for all the different ones. But I just wanted to show you what that looks like. The panels are numbered 1 through, I believe we have 84 different total panels. Each of them has a very specific name to the group of people presenting. The location, as I mentioned, SSC is Student Services Center, Conference Room 300. Otherwise, students may be in the Price Center for all the various rooms, Bear Room, Dance Studio, East Ballroom. I recommend, if you can, get there ahead of time to try to take a look at where your space is, where you'll be presenting. The moderator is assigned to each room as well, so that should be listed. There's one panel where we're still looking for a moderator, so that's TBA. Otherwise, as you're listed as a student presenter, the names that are there, that's the order that you will be presenting in. It is not necessarily alphabetical or anything. Sometimes it's in that order because there's a very specific reason. The person may not be able to present later, or there might be someone who's looking to find that presenter at a particular time, like a special donor. So just keep in mind that's the planned order. You can estimate each talk will take about 15 minutes or 20 minutes if there's a co-presenter, but it's not exact. Some people go a little bit fast, some people go a little bit long. And so just keep that in mind if you're trying to tell other people that are coming to listen to your talk when you'll present. It's not exactly that you'll begin at 2:15. It might be 2:12, it might be 2:20. So just keep that in mind, is maybe have them come one talk early so they don't miss your talk. All right, next slide, please. So we are offering SRC certificates. I wanted to make sure that you are all aware of that. And so this was sent out, I think, by email yesterday as well. If you're interested in a printed certificate, please fill out this form. All students are receiving a digital one, but if you want to have a printed copy at the end of the conference, complete this form. I'm putting it also into the chat. And that way we will print one and have one ready available on Thursday. You'll pick it up at the closing remarks around 11:45. And those will be available. Hopefully you're able to be there at that time. If you want a physical one, but you have to leave early for whatever reason, please check in with us and we will let you know at the conference if we can hand it off earlier. But otherwise, if you want a printed copy, this is the best way to let us know that you would like one. Otherwise, again, all students will receive a link after the conference to receive a digital certificate. So you don't need to tell us if you want a digital one, just if you wanted a printed one. Next slide. Okay, so for guests, I've mentioned them a little bit before, but SRC guests can come and watch a presentation. They can come for free. We recommend that all your guests pre-register online. It will help with faster check-in. And so if you don't mind, either you can register them or you can have them register themselves, but please send them to the same link where you registered and just click on the guest attendee link to register. Now, as guests, we still want them to check in at the reception area. That's at the Price Center West Ballroom foyer. So if you can have them check in before they come check out your talk, that would be appreciated. There is, again, no cost for guest registration. They can come and listen to you as they wish. Next. There is parking available on campus, but it is something you will have to pay for, they will have to pay for. For conference visitor parking, there is a special code to use through either the app Park Mobile, or you can pre-purchase it online through something called Off Street. So if you're going to have your guests park, there are a few different structures they can consider. If you're familiar with the UCSD campus, Gilman parking structure is probably the most popular one. Is the nearby one, but there may be also limited parking there. There's also South parking structure, which also has visitor parking. Slightly farther, but it's still pretty accessible to the Price Center. And there's a new Triton parking structure, which is adjacent to Gilman. It's part of the new buildings that are being constructed on campus. And I believe it is open. People can start parking there. There should be some visitor parking, so keep an eye out on that. Check it out ahead of time if you get a chance. But that would be another place where you and or your visitors can park for the day. If you are doing conference visitor parking, it is $8 a day, and you can park in B or S parking spots. And with Park Mobile, the code is 47800. It is also available on our website, so just keep that in mind. But Park Mobile will be the app that we use here at UC San Diego to register for parking. If you pre-purchase it online off street, that's another link that you can get to. And we will be sending these slides to all the presenters. So hopefully you can grab that. But you can also look at the transportation website to find more information about this. If you do find the link, Kirsten, that would be helpful to just throw into the chat. Thank you.
The link for parking?
Yes, please.
Okay, yes, let me grab that.
Appreciate that. All right, next slide. Okay, so we are near the end. A lot of information, as mentioned, is at the SRC website. It's very simple, src.ucsc.edu. Next, I think there's a few more pieces of information. Okay, so the full program with your abstracts, your titles, everything, your mentors, the moderator, is being worked on right now. It will be posted soon, but that will be probably later this week or maybe early next week. Check back at SRC for additional updates. If you have any questions that don't get answered today, or if you have things that come up, please email us at ugresearch@ucsc.edu. That's been our main method of getting back to you. So just letting you know. Let's see. I think that should be good for now. So questions, I think, is the next slide. Yes.
And
Yes, go ahead.
I did have a question come in. Can you reiterate again how students will get their presentations onto the computer? So if they're using our computer, and if somebody has, say, Google Slides, what should they do?
What we recommend is you get to the room about 15 minutes early between sessions before your hour session that you're assigned. And during that time is a great time to log in, grab your slides, and make sure that you have that available. Now, please note, if you are logging in to Google Slides and someone else needs to log into their Google Slides, there may be several different accounts that are coming in. So it might be helpful to maybe download a copy onto the machine, but just to make sure that you do have access to your slides and it won't take time during the hour while you're presenting or switching presenters to pull up your slides.
Yes, I think ideally having it downloaded onto the computer, so that you don't need to worry about, oh, somebody else is logged on, I need to log on now. And if you have a flash drive, that makes it even easier because then you can just do it that way.
Yes. Also, I just got a couple of different notes from people about the presenter lineup. The session that comes after Thursday morning 1, it's titled Wednesday morning 2, but it should be Thursday morning 2. So apologies for that. That should be fixed and updated pretty soon, but just wanted to let you know that that is an issue. A couple people have messaged me about that. There's a question that asked about how specific should they get about specific terms. They understand they should be explaining and not just using jargon, but this person wants to know, I don't want to spend too much time explaining all the terms. How does that work? Do you have recommendations, Dr. Kung?
Yeah, I think certainly for any terms that you're going to be using or any abbreviations, you definitely want to write it out the first time. And then, like if you put EKG, you wouldn't just put EKG, you would write it out and then in parentheses put EKG. And then from then on, you can use the term EKG. So do that for any sort of abbreviation. It can be a little bit difficult because some of the people in the room will be very familiar with your topic and some won't be at all. So it's hard to say exactly how jargony to be. Assume that people in the room probably have a basic knowledge of your general area, like maybe a knowledge of biology or knowledge of economics, but not your specific area.
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah, that people have a general idea of your field, but may not be experts. And yes, understand there may be some people that they don't completely understand anything, but most likely, if they're there as general audience members, and they don't understand anything about the field, it's okay that you don't speak to that audience. All right, I have another question. What is expected of us for the time we are not presenting? And I think we did talk about this. This was sent before I talked about it, but while you're not presenting, you are going to other talks. So throughout the other 6 sessions, you get to listen to at least 6 other talks, maybe. You might go within the same session to another talk. You can also take a break if you want. I understand that conferences can be a lot. We're actually going to have a sensory-friendly room. We haven't necessarily put this out there, but there will be information about that where students can just take a break. It'll be dim lighting. It will have calm music. It'll be a place for people to just chill out. If you want to doodle, I think we'll have some pipe cleaners in there. So it'll be a nice space if you just need a break. So just understand you don't have to be going the whole time. And that will be nice too. So if you are not presenting, most likely you're attending other talks, but you can also take a break or go talk to someone else about exciting research that they're doing. That maybe you want to collaborate, maybe you just want to learn more about their work. So feel free to do the networking that you might do at conferences. Just see
Yeah.
how it goes.
Take advantage of this time to talk to other researchers. And I always recommend that everyone goes to at least one talk that's in an area somewhat related to their own, and at least one talk that's just completely in a different area, but seems kind of intriguing to you. We are almost at time, so I wanted to highlight a couple of other questions. There was a question in terms of using notes versus index cards. I typed an answer into the chat. If you're not able to see that, please let me know. And then there was also a question about using LaTeX instead of PowerPoint or Google Slides. LaTeX is typically used for math presentations. If it's something that a laptop would not need a specific app for, like if it's browser based, that should be fine. If it's something where there's going to need to be a specific app, then I would recommend bringing your own computer.
And I might recommend with LaTeX specifically, like make your presentation in PDF format, and that way it can work on any machine, and that probably simplifies things a little bit. Just to finish up the last question, there was a question about do we need to be there from start to finish? And generally, yes, you are expected to be there from start to finish both days. If for some reason there is some other extenuating circumstance, I know a few people have like classes, for instance, yes, step away and then come back. But in general, you are expected to be there primarily both days.
And students in the summer research program, the URH summer research program, are required to be there both
Yeah,
days and are
right.
not taking classes, so they shouldn't be needing to leave for classes. If you have some sort of issue, talk with your program coordinator if you're in the summer research program.
I understand that it is 1 o'clock. I do have a few more questions that I can answer, but also if people need to go, feel free to leave. But I'm happy to answer some more questions. So there's one question. Is there a place where we can see the list of universities attending? It will be in the program probably later this week or early next week. So keep that out as something to keep in mind. What if we cannot find our name on the list of presenters? Definitely talk to us because we will make sure that you aren't missing and that we should have a space for you. So appreciate that question. And if that person can stay or send an email to UG Research, we'll double check to make sure that there was probably a small error in terms of copying your name over, but there should be your name somewhere. Another question about the schedule. That was about the last 2 pages. Wednesday morning, it's actually Thursday morning too. So updating that. Yes, a couple
Question
notes on.
about where and when this slideshow will be posted so that we can access it while preparing for next week.
I'm sorry, one more time. Oh, where the
Where,
slideshow?
yes.
So we will be sending out the slideshow as well as the recording, but probably in a few days. It might take a little time for it to be processed. And so if you don't mind being patient, we appreciate that. But we will post it both on the SRC website and we will send it to all SRC presenters the same way we sent the presenter lineup. It will be through an email from our system. So double check your spam folders if you aren't getting the emails. And you can email us too if you're wondering about some of these questions. Let's see. Would you advise against using jargon? And then the question got cut off if it doesn't. I think this is similar to a question that we had answered already. So if you have more questions about jargon, please hang out or ask another question, and you can ask it either publicly or privately. I'll move on to the next question. Should we introduce how our research connects to the panel title on the schedule, or can we just start talking about the specifics of our research?
I think it's fine to start talking about the specifics of the research, especially since you weren't the one who created the panel. So it might be obvious how it fits into the panel, and you certainly are welcome to say something about that. Or if there was a presentation in the panel and that presentation was before yours and yours kind of relates to it, it's absolutely fine to say, oh, as John mentioned, blah, 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 blah. It's fine to make references to that, but you're not expected to kind of justify why your talk is in a particular panel.
Right, exactly. Question about are index cards allowed? And I think this was referred to briefly, but yes, you can certainly bring index cards if that's more comfortable for you to have notes for your presentation. No problem. Someone is concerned about their Wi-Fi being slow and they're worried they may be logged out, so they just wanted to let us know about that. Um, this might be a silly question. Where can we find the sign-up page for the time slots? Okay, so that is on the Summer Research Conference website, SRC. Was
Is
that
this
shared
for
earlier?
the practice presentation? Or no, sorry, for the like the
Oh, that's a good question. For the practice presentations that was sent in the SRP newsletter, if you're part of the summer research program from the Undergraduate Research Hub, if you mean the sign, yeah, that's a good question. I think that's what the question is. If you don't mind
yes,
writing in
so
the chat.
you're just asking about where the actual current schedule is.
I'm not sure actually, but
Okay.
it could
So I
be
just
either the presenter lineup, but I think you're right. I think it's practice presentations.
okay. Let me work on that.
We might, yeah, grab that link for you. If
So I just put in, I'm sorry, I just put in the general link to the SRC. I'm currently putting in the link to the presenter lineup.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Someone did ask, can we switch days for presenting? And at this point, we have set the schedule. If there's someone that you think might switch days, if there's someone that you see that like maybe you're friends with somebody and you're able to switch times because it's a bad conflict for you, that might be possible.
I
Uh,
wouldn't, but I wouldn't do that without contacting us first because there's a
right,
lot of instances where people were put at specific times for specific reasons.
correct. Yes.
So if there's a big conflict or if your mentor wanted to come and you're scheduled at a time that they can't come or anything like that, please reach out to UG Research at ucsd.edu. Please don't switch times on your own or like, oh, I found a friend to swap with.
That's correct. Yes, yes. I apologize for not clarifying this. You should go through us, but it would be helpful to figure out if there is somebody else to swap with. It may not be simple for us to find someone on a different day. So I can't guarantee that it would happen. But yes, please communicate with UG Research. And then if there is someone that you know, or if you can at least identify maybe a potential group that would make sense for you to switch into, we can look into it and see if there's a possibility, but no guarantees. Is there a form of attendance for this Zoom? For this Zoom, we would just collect the registration information. Zoom collects all of that and knows how long you've been here, so you should be fine. Okay. Other than certificates, are there honorary awards being presented? No. This is not a competition. We are just giving certificates for presenting, and so I just wanted to clarify that with the question. Do you have any other questions on your end?
I'm looking through it. I don't believe I see any questions that were not either responded to in the chat or addressed out loud.
Okay.
But if anyone has a question that either wasn't responded to or was responded to but is still not quite clear, if you could either unmute yourself and ask it or put it in the chat again, and we can make sure that we get to all of the questions that people might have.
Yeah.
In general, just be excited. You're going to do great. Everyone is really looking forward to hearing about the research that you're doing. Questions that you have about the conference should all go to UG Research, and for potential issues like the student who mentioned needing to or asking about switching days, the sooner any large issues like that, the sooner you contact us, the better. That gives us more options in terms of trying to be able to figure out something that might work well. So please don't wait until the very last minute to raise an issue. Go ahead and reach out to us right away, and we can work with you to make changes as best we can.
I did get one more quick question. How many people will we be presenting in front of? And this was mentioned earlier, but it varies. Some rooms are just a handful of people, maybe 5, 10 people. Other rooms are more popular and they can have maybe 30, 40, 50 people. And so it's a range. Most of those people will be people that are also presenting in the same session, and their families and friends and other research mates that might be in the room. And then, of course, some people that are coming just as attendees to hear what's going on. So sometimes it's a lot of people, sometimes it's very few, but it's a whole range.
Yeah, and don't worry if your session has relatively few audience members. Sometimes it's just a question of research team size varies. And so if you're in a panel where everyone on the research group, everyone on the panel is part of a very small research group, or maybe is doing research independently with their mentor versus being on a panel where everyone is in a research team of 30 people, the number of attendees is going to vary. So don't read into how big your audience size is.
100%. There was a question that just came in also, are there presentations happening at the same time? And yes, there are 12 different presentations happening at the same time. So concurrent sessions is what we call it. All right. I think we're getting to the end of the questions. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And we look forward to seeing you next week at the conference.